Trump is officially the 47th president of the US. He not only won the electoral collage but also won the popular vote. What went wrong for Harris or what went right for Trump?
Mr.Reddit.
I don't know the answers, but I'm interested in going to work tomorrow because half of our employees were split on being Harris/Trump supporters, so there's going to be some drama. LMAO update since people were interested. It wasn't as dramatic as most of you hoped. LOL. Friend groups and cliques were definitely whispering and shooting dirty looks, but our boss said in the morning meeting to be civil and not to discuss politics.
Democrats should try having a primary next time and let the people pick a candidate.
Why though? The Obama-Clinton debate and primary was massive. Whoever won it was going to be president, whoever they ran against. Any Dem candidate following a hotly contested primary like that would wipe the floor with Trump as a candidate. The problems came when it was Hillary's turn, so they started to rig them. And it became you'll vote for who you're told to rather than who was best for the job, and it just became a drawn-out crowning ceremony for their chosen candidate.
Because Clinton's people dominated the party, and even though the Democrats won, they still lost. The shenanigans of 2016 were a clear response to another grassroots candidate. All of a sudden by 2020 you have party insiders who have been fighting their own party's grassroots support for over a decade. Even though Clinton wasn't on the ballot in 2020, they were still viciously anti-Bernie.
Yeah, I've always been arguing that a big part of the situation America is in now is due to Democrat arrogance. Obama was the last time they let a nominee outside of the Democrat establishment become nominee, and they really didn't like it. They took the rise of Trump as an opportunity. Here is a Republican candidate so bad we can force our preferred candidate regardless of what the electorate think, was their thought basically in 2016, 2020 and again in 2024. It blew up in their faces in two of those three results, and even the time it worked in 2020 there were warning bells that the electorate had voted anti-Trump rather than pro-Biden. That's the big issue with what the Democrat Party does. It sees the ultimate goal is to ensure that its select group of established politicians maintain power of first the Democrat Party and second get elected. They saw what happened to the Republican Party and how Trump took it over and are terrified of a populist left-wing candidate doing the same to the Democrat Party. They would rather lose election after election and ensure they maintain a grip on the Democrat Party than risk putting forward a candidate like Bernie or AOC.
Maybe the Dems should have had an actual primary instead of trying to run with Biden until it was way too fucking obvious that he couldn't do it. Imagine a world where in the 2023 State of the Union he announces he's stepping down and will be a mentor to any and all campaigns to continue the legacy. It would have been an iconic moment.
I do think this was a big part of it. I think putting Harris up alienated some people because it essentially telegraphed that voter opinions weren't important to the party. Had there been a primary and voters given more input, perhaps the election would have swayed differently.
They carry it, but they'll never accept it. Over the next 4 years you're going to see her a spin-up of the "this is all leftist/Russia/China's fault" machine, and the Dems will try even harder to grab this mythical principled undecided voter they keep claiming exists, and they'll keep doing it via the most stilted and unpopular people you could ever dream of, and they'll keep eating shit.
2016. Rigged primary with superdelegates, Democrats lose. 2020. Honest primary, Democrats win. 2024. No primary at all, Democrats lose. There's some kind of pattern here. I just can't seem to place it.
Everyone hated Harris before she was the presidential candidate-elect. When she ran against Joe Biden for the 2020 election, she was polling at 4% or lower. Let's be clear, that was with Democratic voters.
Harris was much more unpopular than Biden was. Public people and the media then had to conveniently forget that she was unpopular because she was now the candidate they were stuck with. Had there been a proper primary, she would never have been the chosen candidate.
The Democrats painted themselves into a corner letting Biden run as long as he did, though. Harris was the only rational choice by the time he pulled out. Biden and the Democrats lost the election before Harris was ever a candidate. ETA, when I say only rational choice, I mean purely logistically and having a name that was known by the majority of the population. E.g., someone said Walz would have been a better choice, but the average person probably didn't know Walz before he was chosen as VP. They had less than 4 months to select and vet candidates, fundraise for primaries, run primary debates, hold actual primaries, campaign and fundraise as the nominee, and hold presidential debates, etc. people at least knew who Harris was, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, legally she was the only person that could use the funds Biden had raised. It was fundamentally impossible to use anyone else by the time Biden pulled out.
Same thing they did in 2016. Fucked with the primary to boost Clinton over Sanders.
And the fact they refused to believe Kamala is not a popular politician is wild. She has a long track record of being a mediocre, basically unlikable politician, but even today Reddit is bursting with "how could this happen?" threads. They'll never learn.
People are not happy with the way the country is. They think Kamala isn't going to do anything different than Biden. That was the deciding factor. People that hate Trump voted for him because shit is expensive and people are broke. Regardless if they're right, that's their thinking. Edit. Thanks for the gold and awards everyone. Edit 2. Didn't expect this response. I appreciate the gold. And just for clarification, I didn't vote for Trump or Harris.
People are not happy with the way the country is. They think Kamala isn't going to do anything different than Biden. That was the deciding factor. People that hate Trump voted for him because shit is expensive and people are broke. Regardless if they're right, that's their thinking. Why can't anyone on Reddit fucking understand what you just said is 100% true? Thank you. It's so weird how people look past what's obvious and want to just blame third-party voters, people sitting at home, people this, people that. Why not blame the extremely unpopular candidate and how expensive life is right now? Exit polls prove the economy is why she lost. Also, can y'all stop fucking downvoting anyone who criticizes Harris? Seriously, what the fuck is Reddit? Kamala voters thought it would be easy because if you simply criticized Harris you were banned from subreddits. How is that okay? How does that make us better than Trump? Silencing the opposition, also they are voting third party, let me harass them, was not a bright idea. And it doesn't even matter whose fault the economy is. That's just how people feel. The left also wants to speak about all kinds of societal issues. Which is good, unless people are broke. When people can't eat or pay rent, the last thing they care about is women's rights or gay rights or anything else that doesn't involve putting food on the table.
You know, every time I said she was a weak candidate that doesn't appeal to voters, Reddit downvoted me and labeled me a misogynist. I think the internet echo chambers really make a lot of the Democrat base forget just how many Americans don't agree with them unilaterally. Seeing her lose by what looks to be around 5 million votes, I feel vindicated. I personally think she made some serious mistakes in her campaigning. Plenty of people refused to vote for her over Gaza. She refused to go on Joe Rogan unless he came to her for a 1-hour interview, while JD and DT got to streamline 6 hours of propaganda to millions, a focus on celebrity endorsements, which really shows a disconnect for anyone concerned about income inequality. A seemingly lack of understanding about how socially conservative Latinos are. Maybe it's just my algorithm, but it seems she did absolutely nothing to try and win the religious vote. I can't say I'm surprised, and I tried to warn my wife weeks ago that she was not anywhere close to as popular as TikTok and Reddit thinks in the real world. Exactly. Redditors fail to understand that this platform is mostly a left-leaning bubble and not representative of the real world.
Exactly. Redditors fail to understand that this platform is mostly a left-leaning bubble and not representative of the real world. Across the world there has been a major shift against incumbents. This is the biggest example. The Dems should have moved away from Biden sooner. I further wonder where we would be if Sanders won the 2016 primary. Edit. To clarify my Bernie statement, I am not a Bernie fan, but it is clear that the country has been looking for something that is just different from where we have been since 2016.
I think that was the point where we slipped into the mirror universe. Take away DNC manipulation and fraud, and Sanders clearly won the primary. As someone who actually wanted to help people, he would have easily won 2 terms, and his endorsement would have mattered. When so many of the base chose to pretend that hadn't happened, they handed the White House to Trump the first time. Biden's cognitive decline was apparent in 2016, and when a large portion of the base chose to pretend it wasn't, and then were forced to admit that it was, they lost credibility. When Biden did nothing to protect RVW, although running on codifying it, as Obama had before him, and cut the amount of the promised COVID relief checks. That probably helped nothing. The DNC arguing in court that it had no obligation to a fair primary, and that it could simply install a candidate, and then proceeding to do so. Certainly helped Trump more than anyone else. The DNC using defenders of democracy, after all this, and while using the legal system to try to kick other candidates off ballots, was probably not all that helpful either. Let's see if any lessons have been learned by 2028.
My 2 cents, the average American is stressed out, too much work, too many expenses, cannot afford anything, has lots of fear about the world's future and their role in it. The American dream is dying. Trump comes around and says, I hear you, and it's those people out there that are responsible. The Democrats say, no, things are fine and will continue to be fine. Is Trump right? Is it really those people? You lost your job due to corporate greed taking jobs overseas. Can he actually do anything? Maybe, that's the vote for him. Are things okay? No, things are not okay. It's the world okay? No. Why would the average American vote for a party that does not even acknowledge the problem?
First, switching candidates mid-election and opting for a weaker choice. Kamala Harris is not Obama, she lacks his charisma and strength. She comes across more like an HR director than a president. Her primary appeal was essentially, I'm not Trump. Second, and more important, is the aggressive approach in U.S. left politics that alienates half the voters by belittling their beliefs/opinions and labeling them with various ists/phobes/files, etc. This has backfired spectacularly. Trump didn't have to do anything to win, the American left did it for him.
First, switching candidates mid-election and opting for a weaker choice. Kamala Harris is not Obama. She lacks his charisma and strength. She comes across more like an HR director than a president. Her primary appeal was essentially, I'm not Trump. Second, and more important, is the aggressive approach in U.S. left politics that alienates half the voters by belittling their beliefs/opinions and labeling them with various ists/phobes/files, etc. This has backfired spectacularly. Trump didn't have to do anything to win, the American left did it for him.
I feel like the American left is always looking for 100% agreement on every single thing. They fight between themselves because if they disagree on one issue, then they're enemies. They're disorganized, they hate each other, and they push people away. The entire basis of a lot of the voters is we are the right choice because we are not them. This will simply not stick when you start putting everyone who doesn't agree with you on everything in the them category. Trump is a moron, but he knows how to pull other morons together. Edit. I hope people are not misconstruing this as me blaming the woke left. Kamala ran an awful campaign. What I am saying is she never should have been in that position in the first place, and there should be less dialogue that turns people away from the left, which has only allowed people like Kamala to step in.
Yep, exactly this. Even if you just want to discuss a subject that is sensitive, you will be name-called and chastised, even though you have the same opinion, lol. I'm not American, but Swedish, and we have the exact same problem here regarding topics such as immigration. For the longest time, if you were not in favor of 100% open borders and giving out welfare like it was candy to every middle-aged man in the Middle East, then you were a racist, Nazi, and probably a lot of other things. Now far-right parties are on the rise in most of Europe, go figure. The left needs to do some serious soul-searching because it seems they have the same problem no matter where in the world you look.
Right for Trump, miraculously surviving an assassination attempt and fist-pumping, the debate with Biden, grassroots media becoming more popular/trust in mainstream media plummeting, going on as many popular podcasts as possible, Democrats fracturing over Gaza/Israel conflict, endorsements from RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, Elon Musk, and Joe Rogan, wrong for Harris. Never popular among the general Democrat voter base. Refusal to do any interviews for a month after being named the candidate. Bad performance when she finally did interviews. Currently being in charge of a border that most Americans consider to be a disaster. Admitting she would do nothing different than Biden, Obama, media, and celebrities chastising black men/minorities who don't support Kamala.
I saw a lot of the talking heads throughout the night saying that Harris failed to get to the US to know who she is, this, after 4 years of being the elected vice president, to a president who initially stated that he would only serve one term. Who did she think was going to run after he stepped down? She would have had to go through a primary, but would have been the logical choice, and yet she failed to set out her stall until Trump got shot and the Dems realized they might just lose. They should have put Sleepy Joe to bed far sooner than they did. Instead, she bore the stain of a uniquely unpopular president and started her campaign late. Once it started, she didn't fail to get the American people to know who she is. She failed to understand who they are. The Democrats abandoned the white working class vote decades ago and have largely regretted it since. Compound that with the constant rhetoric on the left for young men to shut up, sit down, and get out of the way, and it's no wonder Trump did better with men of all colors. The Dems relied on a black and brown vote that is feeling like the party have failed them, and at a time when the color that increasingly matters is green. People in Michigan aren't worried about what some college kid in California's pronouns are. They're worried about the fact that it costs $3 for a box of eggs. Last and by no means least, she pucked the wrong running mate. If Israel/Palestine wasn't a news item, then she would have gone with Shapiro. He's a solid Democrat without being as left as she is, and he's widely popular in a key battleground state. Walz was a popular enough governor, but his politics are largely the same as Harris, and the attempt to brand him as Coach Walz was woefully transparent. Overall, just like in 2016, they were too busy patting themselves on the back for a job well done that they failed to hear the tolling of the mega bell.
The Democrats should have done a primary to get people excited because I think people were extremely over Biden and voted against what they perceived as a continuation of the old administration.
The Democrats should have done a primary to get people excited because I think people were extremely over Biden and voted against what they perceived as a continuation of the old administration. What went wrong for Harris was her policy was, Trump is bad. Obviously, half the country voted for him, so that wasn't a good message. The only real policy she ran on was abortion. That doesn't play with a large portion of the population, at least not when the economy and immigration are such big issues. She couldn't speak on policy. She was basically just a bad candidate. She should have went on Rogan. It was simply a someone had to lose scenario, IMO. The RS put up one of the only candidates in the country who could potentially lose in this economy, and the DS put up one of the only candidates in the country who could potentially lose to Trump. Both sides ran completely on polarization, no one attempted to sway the middle, and the R base just showed up. Also, it's interesting how many states voted down abortion restrictions, and voted for Trump at the same time. I feel that was Harris's biggest push. It appears voters didn't feel the same way since they could vote for abortion, and still vote for Trump anyways. It just didn't work at all.
What went wrong for Harris? Is she a terrible candidate taking over from a terrible candidate? Biden's been unable to form a coherent sentence for a few years and blocked them from finding a good nominee. All in all, she did pretty well given that the entire party confirmed everyone's worst suspicion about them, that they were hiding the president's cognitive decline. Beyond that, the Democratic Party has done absolutely fucking nothing to reach out to college uneducated whites, which is actually who their policies should help. There's 22 million white people in poverty and 8 million black people. When you spend a decade as a party talking about racial justice, those 22 million people struggling start to fucking hate you. They're struggling too and being told effectively they deserve it. That's how they view the Democratic Party, ATM like it or not, and literally every interview for the past 3 cycles they have been saying that with increased volume. Trump won the popular vote. This election result is what the American people wanted, and I hate that, but ignoring it or calling them dumb removes any chance of reflection. Elon and Rogan were allies that were pushed out. I hate what they have become, but excommunicating people for slightly different views has consequences. Megyn Kelly should have been a convert. RFK was a Democrat. Trump ran a better campaign.
It's too early for a full analysis, so this is all just speculation, but I'd bet all of the following were factors to some degree. Biden stayed in the race for too long. There were jokes around the time of the Super Bowl about Biden being in a state of horrific cognitive decline. He never should have tried running again. The Dems would have had ample time to elect a strong candidate with a lot of time for a full campaign. Having only 100 days to string together a campaign for a national election is outlandish. Harris failed to energize the left-leaning base when she repeated the same revolting centrist speak about Israel. She and her team likewise failed to convey why Americans were hurting from inflation. And she instead went on about macroeconomic growth that likely didn't resonate at all with the average American who was struggling. As a whole, the Democrats have failed to put together a cohesive identity to energize potential voters. Instead of, yes, we can, change, hope, and other normative and community-creating language, the message was constantly on dialectical negativity. Trump is dangerous and bad. Therefore, vote Democrat. Compared to Trump's populism, that doesn't exactly inspire people. The left has badly needed a potential hero since the first Obama campaign. Bernie Sanders came closest but got sabotaged by his own party. Since Obama, the messaging has been reduced to Trump is bad. Therefore, we're good. Voting for the lesser of two evils can easily result in voter apathy and a lack of turnout. Trump has control over major media outlets Fox and Twitter. The most powerful people in the world are techno-elites, and they held long propaganda campaigns for Trump. As someone who didn't vote and is politically homeless, the left just is not a welcoming movement. No, this isn't an endorsement for Trump on my end, but watching the way that you guys treat other people who do not align with you while you display moral superiority complex is very off-putting for a lot of people even if they agree with your side policy-wise. Again, you can find that ridiculous and silly, but here we are. We will just take the down votes and comments below my comments as an example of everything wrong with progressives.
I voted and even voted left, but you're spot on. And you can see a lot of it in political Reddit threads today. They talk down to anyone that doesn't align perfectly with them. Right, centrist, apolitical, doesn't matter. And talking down to someone is the quickest way to push someone the other direction or, at best, instill apathy in them. They think the solution is to just get more people to vote, when in reality, the solution is to treat people who are different than them as their equals and have an actual conversation with them. Which is ironic. You don't have to wonder, it was in the exit polls. The economy. People think they're financially worse off than 4 years ago, and so they voted for the guy who was there when things were better. There are a lot of people out there who will ignore every other value and concern they have, as long as they get an extra $15 in their paycheck at the end of the week. And you know why money is so tight for them? Why the gap between poor and wealthy is so huge? Guys like Trump, ironically.
1. Harris was a last-minute choice from the Democrats. 2. Harris is a black Indian woman. The country barely survived Obama. 3. We were fed a lot of news that Harris would win. We were not fed a lot of news saying this was a tight race, like it always is. 4. Food prices are up significantly. Trump said he would raise tariffs, stupid idea, but his voters do not understand the consequences, while Harris said nothing. 5. Harris was a last-minute decision representing the current administration. 6. The normal people of this country are dealing with high prices everywhere and low wages. None of this was addressed by Harris. 7. She never said how she would be different from Biden.
Fox News and Twitter was Trump's greatest asset. And a total lack of outward looking by a large percentage of the population who have been brainwashed into thinking that Republicans give them the greatest freedoms in the world. While they try to live working 2 jobs at $7 an hour and get bankrupted if they break a leg.
I think there is a lot of looking back to pre-COVID prices etc., and not realizing that caused the current levels of inflation etc. People want to believe that changing president will bring all the prices down, but it's not going to happen. The world has changed, most people lack the patience or will to understand how the world actually works. They aren't going to follow the trail back and figure out that Trump crashed the oil market and it affected gas prices 2 years later. Or look at what happened when shipping containers were going to places like Africa during COVID and not returning to China, and what that did to shipping prices. It's all surface level. Prices are up now, must be Biden. Let's get Trump back so we get his prices.
Our country is rapidly changing. Just my experience to add to the conversation, I'm a second-generation Arab American, and many Arabs in my community voted for Trump, which is a huge shift for us. Lots of that, of course, having to do with indignation about Gaza, but also because the Democrats only thing that our parents and grandparents passed down to us in the Reagan and Bush eras are starting to be questioned by younger people in the Arab American community. Around this time last year in a hugely Muslim city in the Midwest, a large controversy arose at a public school regarding some LGBT books, which was met with stiff resistance by members of the Arab American/Muslim community. It became a nationally televised debacle. I don't have numbers, but I also have heard that many younger African Americans have become more open to Republican politics too. You'll find on YouTube a growing number of African American people with conservative viewpoints. I don't want to comment too much on that, because I don't follow those channels and I'm not African American. Having said all that, I think Trump won, overall, for a variety of reasons, all very complex and beyond the scope of a Reddit post. Note, I voted for Kamala.
Thank you all for watching. If you are interested, subscribe and watch other videos.